Thank you. Oh, it's so nice to be here with everybody. I want to just, because there's this video I want to show you first that was done about 12 years ago by a fellow named Matthew McCarthy, who is a journalist for, at the time, for The Record in Kitchener. And he interviewed me and did a little video of me painting. So I'm going to start with that. I'm looking for something that isn't conventional, that isn't bucolic, isn't typically pretty. Maybe that's because landscape painting, you know, it's been done, it's been done, it's been done. So you want to say something new or show something new. When people say, well, what do you do? I paint from observation. You just got to see it. And we don't always do that. And especially if you live in a place for a long time and you get sort of used to seeing things and then you don't see them anymore. But painters have this thing that we do where we look for things that are interesting in a painting. And so our paintings can show people what they're missing. I wander around first. So I'll sit in the grass, or I'll, you know, wander in behind trees, or, you know, at the bottom of a bank, at the top of a bank. It's part intuition and part skill. You shouldn't be thinking. Yes, I'm thinking about composition. I'm thinking about what to leave in, you know, what to take out of the painting, you know, of the scene. The other part of it is just responding to what you see and being open to things that change. You know, you could be caught in the rain, you know, so you set up, you see these fabulous clouds that you want to paint, and boy, they look dramatic, and there's purples and blues, but you know that they could be raining on you any moment. The other challenges are people, you know, kind of interrupting you, because when you're outside reading a book, no one's bugging you, but if you're painting outside, boy, someone wants to talk to you. I am talking to myself the whole time, really, while I'm out there, and sort of talking to the painting, and hoping that it's going to come with me and make everything work, right? I want to be part of it. That's what happens when you're painting outside. You get to be part of nature, and especially if you're still. And you know, hunters say this too, you know, which is sort of ironic, but when they're outside and they're sitting and they're waiting and things happen and they become part of it and they're not an intruder anymore. So I guess that's how I feel. I'm being invited in to this cycle. It makes you feel like the luckiest person in the world. And wow, I can't believe I get to do this. Really, everyone should be me, you know, that's how I feel sometimes. And often when I'm painting by myself, I wish someone was there so I could say, did you see that? So I didn't want to show this right away because I don't believe it completely anymore. And part of that is just how you change as an artist. Part of it is that the observation comment was that I believe more today that it's not just observation, but that's still the core, you know? So I was sort of hesitant to show that, but anyway, I look so cute in it that I thought that we should do it anyway. I'm gonna read first. This is William Kentridge, who is a South African artist, was asked to do 6 lectures for Harvard. And before he did the lectures, he called his father and he said, I've got this honor. And his father said to him, well, do you think you have anything to say? And so I felt, you know, kind of the same way. I felt like I have lots to say, and it's only an hour. But, you know, so I wrote down a whole bunch of things, and then I sort of abandoned most of it. But I loved what he put this note in his own notes to himself before the lecture. Remember, you are an artist, not a scholar, but avoid a 6-hour parade of ignorance. And so I have to keep being kind to myself. You don't need to know everything. And I probably have more questions than I do answers. And I really am just an artist. And so I wanted to start, I thought this picture kind of sums up where I came from. So here I am, I'm 9 years old, and my brother's 7, and we're dancing in a living room in, you know, the suburbs of Toronto, in our bungalow, where I grew up from the time I was 4 till 20. And that's my mom fetchingly sitting there in her, her lingerie with her newspapers under the table, always tons of newspapers. She wrote to the Toronto Star almost every week because she had something to say. Somebody else who had lots to say. And so I think she was in the paper more than some of the editorialists were, because she was always being written up in the paper. But here we are dancing, and there's my dog, and I love this. It's a happy moment, and it sort of encapsulate my childhood. If you look above, if you look at the painting that's there, that very kind of old yellowed painting, that was the only painting we had in the house. That was my introduction to art at 9 years old. It's a Robert Wood painting, and if you don't know who Robert Wood is, he was a very famous Texas painter from Texas, from Britain first, and then he settled in Texas and California. So this is called Pacific Coast, and it's a painting of the California Pacific Coast. Well, it looks kind of like England to me, but that's because he was a British painter, I think. I don't know. But to me, that was kind of what I thought a painting was. That's what I thought a painting should be. He was very famous and very wealthy because he sold millions of this particular print. There were millions of them. The other artifact that's in here that's interesting is the ceramic triad. You can see two of them on the wall there. They were kind of faux African ceramics, ladies with the baskets on their head. So it's not good or bad. This is where I came from, So I had not a, would you say, precondition or an inclination towards art without a lot of art history, And we also grew up with the group of seven being the gods of all, as Canadians. That's what we were taught in school. And so that's kind of where I started. I went to Sheridan College, and when I was in Sheridan College, I thought, okay, so I took illustration. I didn't take a fine art because I knew I had to make a living as an artist, or with the skills that I was, with artistic skills, right? So I learned techniques that would help me in a job place. I took interpretive illustration, which was kind of leaning towards magazine illustration, that kind of thing. So still kind of storytelling. To me, that seemed fun. Of course, when you get out in the world, I didn't get all the dream jobs that you kind of thought you might be getting. So I did a lot of, I was in a small studio in Toronto for a long time. I did theater posters, brochures, corporate identities, all kinds of really interesting skill building projects. But everything was sort of based on selling something or being mimetic of a style, which means kind of, oh, this is hip this month. Can we do it in this sort of pop arty style, or can we do it in some kind of Baroque style or whatever? So I got to be good at this skill building. And I had, and I still do a little bit of it, but, I'm sort of I'm antiquated now. The technology took over, and I just, didn't want to keep up anymore, really. So while I was doing this, I was taking life drawing classes, and trying to find some way to have more meaning in my work besides selling for somebody else. So a friend of mine who worked here at the auction told me about the school, and I ended up here in Catherine Gibbons' Tuesday afternoon landscape class. And with that, I learned about Constable from her, and Tom Thompson. Hey, he wasn't one of the group of seven. I didn't know this before. This kind of very, stuff that we take for granted now. I didn't know any of this, and it was fascinating to me. And yeah, I got this chance to be outside. I love being outside, and you get to paint outside. You get to do that? Okay, I'm in. And I had some wonderful sort of insights into very intuitive kind of painting that was like, it was painting. It was real painting. And this is one of the first paintings that I did there in Kathy's class. And I was reminded about it by one of my students in my more recent landscape class. And she said, Laurie, I remember the first time I met you, and you came in your little truck and you had this gigantic canvas that was bigger than you, and you just went and you finished it in 2 hours. Well, what happened was no one told me how to do it, right? I didn't really know how. I knew how to make illustrations. I knew how to do things very small that would be reproduced for, advertising, that kind of thing. So this was my first sort of foray into like this thrilling world of, finding yourself through painting and some kind of, that had more meaning to me. And then I met Jody Joseph, who, with her, when she came to this land. I always say I'm grateful she came to our land. And she brought Cezanne and Matisse and many other artists with her, and expanded our minds even more, and expanded my mind even more. And so from there, it's been just a constant kind of learning. And I think art history is a great place to, those are my teachers, at this point in time. So I'm going to just switch this. This is, it's just a sign I made that I put in I live in a church, so I have a lot of church items, and people give them to me, and this was this beautiful plaque that I put this saying in, and it was William Kentridge, and it's a way to make me feel comfortable in the studio, that I don't have to have the answers when I go in there. I'm only an artist. My job is to make art, not to make sense of everything. That's where you make sense, or that's where you construct, something that means something to you. And so I go in and I'm reminded of this all the time. It's a studio, and he says, your studio is a protected place for the construction of meaning. That's me, trying to make sense of it all. Oh, look at that. I remember when I saw this picture. This is Picasso in his studio in the latter part of his life. He died in the studio. David Duncan Douglas was a famous photographer who was kind of eased his way into Picasso's world and got to do a lot of, incredible photography that's so valuable now, because it says a lot about, what a studio should be. And to me, when I saw this, this is what my studio should be. It should be filled with possibilities. And also, look at how confidently he's standing there. This is my world, and what I do in here is right, whether you like it or not, And that helped me, and I feel like we should all have that kind of confidence, even if it doesn't feel like that inside, you have to show it. And I loved the possibilities in there. I loved the drawings, the sculptures, the paintings, the ceramics, etchings, everything. So what makes me think the painting is the only thing then? When you look at a Picasso, is it a painting? He's, cross-disciplinarian to the nth degree. So, and then there's more photographs of him playing with his kids, look like his grandkids, in the studio, and cutting up rabbits out of cardboard and this kind of thing, and it's just this playfulness. And I realized that really what it was a kindergarten classroom, and so I went into my studio. I'm like, yeah, that's what I do. There's my dry mounting area. There's my, my collage area. This is where I paint. I remember as being in kindergarten, and when the teacher would, play the piano, you go to the next station, and there was, sand or whatever, and all of this stuff. is, you know, what he held on to his whole life, you know. It's hard to do that when we grow up. We grow up and we think that, you know, there's one way that a painting should be made or one way that art should be presented. And we start thinking about how it should be saleable and all of those other things when you have to make a living as a painter. So, is this sad? It's not really sad. It's kind of, I feel like most of my students that I talk to them, they don't have this kind of setup. I have a beautiful studio now. I've had many. My first was a really small bedroom where I had to, you know, walk across the hall and kind of stand in the bathtub and look through the door to get back enough to, you know, to see my work in there. But they were all kind of my nest and my place to, a protected place for the construction of meaning. It was a place where I could go in and do whatever I wanted to do without judgment. Yeah. And that was, you know, Jody said that to me a while back too. She goes, "This is my room of no judgment," her studio, right? So I'm just going to show you this other, so funny. So also, I don't have a lot of my own work in my studio now. I've taken a lot of it out because it mocks you. It kind of, you'll always see the thing you did wrong in your painting, or you'll see a fantastic painting you made that you could never repeat again. And so that mocks you too. And so I recommend you don't do that. I recommend that you surround yourself with possibilities and not your past. So what I did was I went and I thought, you know, we have inventory, right? You paint over stuff, or you give things away, or you just put them somewhere where you can't see them anymore. So I did a big burn, and I took a lot of paintings out into the backyard, and as I laid them on the fire, it was very ritualistic for me. And once I started doing it, I couldn't kind of stop. And as I put them on, I would thank it. I'd thank the painting. You know, it was kind of a saying goodbye. I have like probably 50 paintings or photos like this. I'm not going to show them all to you, just this one. But they became something else as I was burning them. And it was a release for me. And I was joyous about it. And I kept saying to Michael, "Go get some more. They're up there." And they all had something great about it that I wanted to hang on to, or that I was proud of at the time. But there were other things that weren't quite there. So I wasn't, you know, I don't want to be gone one day and have all these things out there that I wish someone didn't have, you know? So keep the best things, right? And that will change. That will change as you progress as an artist. The things that you thought were great, you're going, I'm moving on from there. So what I did with the burning paintings was I started noticing that, you know, the fires were really hot. So I'd read somewhere that you could make charcoal, you know. So I started making charcoal in the fire, right, from willow, and I'd collect these willow sticks and I'd cut them the right size and I'd put them in the can and do all the things that they told you how to do it. And I made something that I could use from all of this stuff that was bugging me, you know. And then the other thing I did was I made walnut ink from the walnut trees that were in the backyard that were staining and everyone hates because they're just, you know, get everywhere. Well, they make the most beautiful sepia. So all of this stuff was momentum for me to move forward. I was making art materials to make new things then. You know, I was letting go of my past, you know, and moving on. What's the next one? Oh, I have a little quote to read you now. So this is David Hockney, who is another one of my my guys that I love. And in 1975, at that time, you know, the very highly realized, stylized, California-esque, the images that we remember. He says, this is 1975, he was about 38 at the time. I was, I think, going on the wrong path.
But it took me a long time to completely realize it, and a longer time to get out of it. In a sense, it took a few years to get out of it. It's amazing, and partly because I was timid, I think. So, here, I'm gonna put the Burning Man on again, just because it's fun. I think he was suggesting that in mid-career, he was afraid to make a drastic change that might appear to negate his earlier production. You know, so Laurie's known for a certain type of painting. Well, how can I stop now? I mean, I'm doing well, I'm selling work, and, you know, galleries need to know what they're selling, you know, so you hesitate to make changes, you know. And so it helps to hear that other artists, especially a caliber of, you know, of David Hockney, who clearly at this point in his life didn't even really need to worry about money, but he couldn't change, or it took a while for him to. I think that your past work sometimes becomes a burden, and that's what was happening to me. It was becoming a burden. And, you know, the worst thing someone can say to you is like, oh, I love your landscapes, especially when you're way off doing something else, you know. And it's sweet, but it kind of does make you realize or feel that maybe you're, am I doing the right thing? It feels right. You know, you have to trust your own instinct. In a way, they're burdened. Yeah, they're burdened with what they see as a commitment. You're burdened with what you see as a commitment. But it might not really be a commitment. It might be severely limiting what really expressive qualities, you know, you have to give. I think that happens when you're older, and I think it causes a kind of crisis. You know, and I think we all kind of feel like that in a way sometimes. All artists can go through that, and if you come out the other side, you come out richer, and the art becomes richer and wider and better. And better how? Just more, for me, it's like I'm interested constantly by what I can do next. You know, I'm always looking for that. There's another quote I'm going to read you that's a really good one too. Look at this little book that got chewed up by my dog that has all kinds of wonderful things in it. Matisse said, arrival equals prison. And the artist must never be a prisoner of his own self, a prisoner of a way of painting, a prisoner of his reputation, a prisoner of his success, and so on. Japanese painters of the Great Period changed their names several times during their lives. They wanted to safeguard their liberties. So they wanted to work in anonymity so that they could do whatever they wanted to do. Okay, what do I have now? Oh, so I'm just going to show you this. So this is the walnut ink I made and the charcoal that I made. And so what I do is I have a model come into the studio a couple times a month, at least, and I go through the process of the drawing practice, which is really kind of essential, and a lot of people lose this. And so we do a lot of short poses and working up to long ones. Sometimes I'll do paintings, but mostly it's just observational drawing. But boy, did I feel good that I had all this great art material that I'd made myself that I could actually go and, you know. So what I do with these, this is kind of interesting, because if you do life drawing on as a regular practice, which I recommend you do, you'll end up with stacks and stacks and stacks of paper that you never look at. You come home and you don't look at them. So what I tell my students is, after every time you do a drawing session, and it doesn't just have to be life drawing, if you do a series of things, lay them all out, keep the good ones, throw the other ones out, and that's the ones you keep. Every once in a while, go back to them and go through it again. Take out the bad ones, you know, and then you're at least got your inventory is something, or your collection of drawings is something you can learn from or be proud of instead of hide, right? Mm-hmm. So what am I doing now? Do you want to know? Okay. Yes, you're supposed to be interactive. Who did I thought I planted a few people that were supposed to. Okay, so this one's kind of interesting. Recycling things. So I had this book, actually, I was trying to remember where this book came from. This book I have here. It's called Famous Paintings. None of them were very famous. There was a couple that were kind of, you know, maybe the Mona Lisa. It was 1914. I checked to make sure it wasn't worth anything before I tore it apart. But what I did do was I set myself some limitations, and that's the other thing that is kind of helpful in the studio, is setting yourself some parameters and working on a series of things. So I always go back to flowers for some reason. I mean, who wouldn't? Flowers are fabulous, you know? And so these were, I thought I'm gonna rip all these out, so I took all the plates out. You know how they, in the old days, they would have like this is the description of the painting, on the other page is like stuck on one side. So I pulled those all out and I cut them apart. I turned them upside down and I started to look for anatomical or botanical imagery. And so the first one I made here with the legs sticking out of the rose is like very Terry Gilliam. You know, it goes into the Monty Python-esque thinking, funny. I was killing myself laughing at that one. And so then I just kept making them. And I thought, I have this whole book. I can make, there's gotta be 40 in here. So I had 40 of them to do. Every morning I would go up and go into my studio and I'd hack up another one. And I was thrilled with with myself. And I didn't care what anybody else thought. And I was kind of shy to show them really in a way, because I thought I don't know, are they art, you know? But what else was happening was all of this paper in here was so beautiful. And I kept thinking, God, how old is the tree that made this paper? Beautiful, thick paper. And it took the ink so beautifully. So I started drawing on that as well. So I had, you know, I had extra, so I still have lots, you know? So that's one little series I was doing. This one. This is, I don't know if you can really see that, but someone gave me a dry mount press. You know, when you have a big studio, people are always going, oh, I'm gonna give Laurie this big thing for her big studio. Well, I had this gigantic dry mount press, which is old technology, but it was given to me, it belonged to someone I loved dearly, and she died, and I thought, I'm gonna try and use this in some way. And so, along with that, she had a framing business, so I had all kinds of map board, and so I started dry mounting book pages onto the map board, and I started drawing on them. And this is one just with, you know, just India ink, and it's an interior, and it's a floral. But it's also, that coffee pot this is kind of cool. It was Alex Colville's coffee pot. And it was given to me by a friend, and she knew that I would be thrilled that it was some famous, you know, artifact. And so I had tried earlier to make a couple of paintings of it, but they weren't very good. They were kind of constipated because I was so stressed that I had to make this coffee pot look good. And so now when I used all these lowly materials, something happened, and I loved the way it turned out. Then what happened is, what do you do when you I'm used to painting, so now I have all this paper stuff. How do you frame it? I got to put it behind glass and put all these Ponzi frames, you know, glass and frame on. It's going to cost me. So anyway, I had it lying around, and then I ordered a whiteboard from Amazon, and this box was around the outside of the whiteboard, and I thought, oh, that's all this stuff that we're ordering now. The cardboard is so beautifully designed, and you know, you can do so much with it. So I made this perfect frame for my Alex Colville coffee pot out of the cardboard that was inside my box of, okay. Now here's another one. So in the winter, I have, you know, I'm painting outside in the summer and the weather's good. I used to paint in the winter. I like it a little, but I'm getting older now and the cold is killing me. So I do love setting up still lifes in the studio, and I'll set up a really big one and try to use it for a long time. So there's one still life, just the end of last winter that I did for a workshop, actually. I set up this big still life, and the paintings that came out of it were kind of predictable, and nobody tried to paint the whole thing. They only just painted a small section of it. And so I decided that I was going to paint this is the first painting I made from the still life setup, which was kind of a, classical setup for me, but I liked it. And I always like, behind the scenes, like the chair behind the setup and the painting on the wall. It says more about the place and the artist, I think. And then I decided I was going to do another version of the setup, only limit myself again. So this is black, white, and tan paper just glued onto mat board. And it's the same still life setup, but because I changed the medium and used scissors and I wasn't drawing, it still feels like mine, but it feels like I was open to things moving around. That's what collage does for me too. It's like you have all these pieces you cut out and you can just move them wherever you want. So it was easier to manipulate things like that than with paint. So always finding a way to use a different medium to kind of find different ways to see. This is a door. I started painting on doors because I had a bunch of them, and using what was at hand. And also what I'm finding with the long format is that there's a narrative that you can sort of read from left to right. It's a different way of composing a long format like that. So this is an oil painting because I thought, I don't do that enough. I should try that. I like it on a smooth surface. This is just, but a limited palette as well. And of course my dog, who's always there, he's in the paintings a lot. It can be cute, I don't care. I like that he's in there. I like that he's part of my world. And I always think about Picasso's little Dachshund that he was given by David Duncan Douglas, and he, put it in all kinds of great paintings, so I can do that. Be like him. Do what he does. Okay. All right, so that concludes the video part, or the slide portion of today. I have, what I decided to do was, is there more? No.
The sunflower.
The sunflower, do you want to see that? Okay. It's a sculpture. And it's hard to paint, it's hard to, I'm not really good at photographing the sculpture, so every once in a while I'll go in and the light will be hitting something. So these are something else that I'm doing. Which I'm collecting metal scraps. People bring them to me now. I don't even have to look for them. People go, hey, look what I found in a dumpster. But I started making sculpture as a relief from the problems of painting during COVID, because I really didn't think, like a lot of us went through a bit of a crisis there, thinking about what the meaning is of painting in the way you did before. And I started finding metal and different things that, again, they look like flowers to me. So most of them are. And the irony of making, soft florally things out of metal was kind of made me laugh to myself too. I liked it a lot. So that was, those burners, they're, I don't know. It's I'm not really even sure what it is, but it had holes in it. And I thought, well, there's petals go in there. These things occur to you, or they do to me. Okay, that's it. I'm not going to bore you with a ton of this. Why don't we just put me back up, because it's so cute. Okay. This painting, 93, I would say. So as a little surprise for all of you, I thought I would do another painting based on, my memory of this day, because Janet reminded me of it. And I started to think about that day. And when you think about, like, I'm at the other end now. I'm 62. I was, how old was I then? A long time ago. Let's not talk about that. But I looked back and I thought, that was the moment I really felt like a painter, but I'm a different painter now. I couldn't paint this again if I tried, and I have tried to forge myself a few times for various reasons, but it's really hard to go back, and I love this painting, and I forgive my naivete about it, and it's very, very Now when I look at it and I look at that Robert Wood painting on the wall in my bungalow, and I think, it looks like it has a similarity. It has a romanticism that I thought was what a painting should be, you know? And so now I have a different feeling, you know, but I still love it. Anyway, so I have, Deb's gonna help me lay out. So I did a painting in response to this painting. From this point of view, it's big. Okay. So this is Andy's sheep from my 62-year-old point of view. My memory. Is it a diptych? I don't know. What is a diptych? We had this conversation yesterday. So I'll just tell you a bit about how I started with this, and you can ask me questions or whatever. So I started with just this panel. And I felt still that it had, I had this in the studio faced the wall, so I was trying not to look at it at all. But, you know, the spatial thing happened to me. The spatial, understanding space, I think after discovering Hockney, I realized that he's helped me a great deal in how to manipulate space and make something feel more vast, right? Or to make it feel confrontational and do it, you know, use space the way you need to for the painting. So I thought maybe I would call this All the Sheeps I've Loved Before, or something cute. But there's, you know, the color is the joy of the day. And what happened was I'm sitting in the field because Kathy told me that my ideas were too big for the canvas that I was using. I was using small canvases, and then I had all this plywood in the shed, and I thought, well, I could paint on that, you know. So I brought that to class, and I had probably the cheapest paint ever, and I had, you know, no knowledge of how to handle paint. Believe me, they didn't teach you that in Sheridan then. They didn't really. But I looked up in this field, and suddenly all the sheep were staring at me. I was too busy getting ready, and then I looked up, and they were all there, and they're all coming at me, and they liked it. They seemed to enjoy that I was there, and I enjoyed just being amongst them, among sheep, right? So then I thought, well, I got to be in it, and so have you ever tried to do a self-portrait? It's really, so there I am, and I look like a Cubist girl, and maybe that's because I love Picasso now, you know. And I stopped. Is it done? I don't know. That's one of those things you never really, it's complete because I had to do this talk. That's where it ended last night, right? But it's, you know, and also there's the Robert Wood painting up there. Again, it came back again. The tree, the Pacific Coast tree, right? Nod to my history. This stuff occurs. It doesn't, you can't plan it. I notice it after. And I think, that's why it looks like that. That's why my trees look like that, you know, because that's where I came from, you know. Anyway, that's from here to there. That's it. That's my story.
Laurie, was that in oil or acrylic?
That's acrylic.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. This is acrylic too. I still love, to me, it's a medium that really works for me because I paint really fast and I can change my mind a lot. I've tried to kind of separate the two. Sometimes I'll put oil on top at the end, just because that's supposed to be something that works. I don't know. I haven't quite made friends with oil that yet, you know. But I have so much more to do, right? So you have to just get on with it. And so I worry less about if someone's going to love my work. I worry much less about whether I can sell it. I still have to make a living as an artist, you know, or in the arts in some way. I always ask my students this in the class. I always say, do any of you have to make a living as an artist? I've hardly had anybody say. Some go, yes, I'd like to, but do you have to? The answer is mostly no, and then I say you're free. You are free. You're free to make anything that you feel you want to make. You don't have the confines of that. So anyway, be free. Does anybody have any questions? Because I'm pretty much done with my chat now. Yeah. Yes? Oh, I just thought I can make it whatever color I want. He doesn't have to be a white sheep. And then also he felt like a Patronus. He was the biggest sheep. And also he felt like this is from memory, remember. I don't have reference. And I was pretty impressed with my sheep remembering skills. So I figured he needed to be a standout, you know. If you were to make something like this, you know, I didn't know what it was going to be. You know, when Keir and Deb were out at my studio and I told them what I was going to do, and then there was this blank thing. I said, this will be something, I don't know what it's going to be yet, but there'll be that one, and then there'll be something else. So this is really only a couple of weeks of, you know, work, really. Judy, yeah?
When I'm outside painting, I used to know how to begin, right?
Right.
You start with the darks, and all of that
Right.
kind of thing. And then I watched you, and you started with the colors.
Yes.
Right. Just
Right.
feelings and colors.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So yesterday, for example, I thought, what the hell? I threw colors on.
Good. Yes, you did.
No sketch, but I've done a thumbnail already.
Right.
But where do you begin here?
I did have, I could show you, there are, I don't have them on my computer. I could show you the process, but it's kind of, it changes, you know? I guess that's it. It doesn't, if I showed you the three, I take shots sometimes, just as a reminder of where I was, so that sometimes when I lose my way, I go, crap, it was better like before. Well, I'm on my way now, there's nothing you can do, keep moving. So it really is very different. Where do you start? It was a big drawing, a big loose drawing, really, of, you know, remembered feeling. You know, I don't really, and it was very abstract. There was no, you know, there was no sheep imagery. They sort of emerged after. I knew they would be there. I didn't have to worry so much about it. But I wanted the space, because that's how it felt to me. It felt like I was the center of the universe, and all of these sheep were coming towards me, you know, and they were coming from everywhere, miles and miles away. So to me, that's what I wanted. You know, I wanted to create a bigger space. Boy, I've heard Hockney say that a few times, you know, right? So where do you start? You know, just like what you said yesterday, you know, I decided, what the hell, I'll just start this way. I'd start all different ways, you know. It's not, you don't have to know what to do. Go into your studio, go out into the woods, that's your studio. You know, you don't have to know what to do. Construct it out there. Kathy didn't really help me in those technical ways, you know. She wasn't that kind of a teacher. She was by example, you know. She was connected to the earth like no one I've ever seen. And it was apparent. And the way she looked, you know, when she talked to you, she would look at what you were painting, not really your painting ever, you know. And you know, she taught me how to see more and really, you know, do it my way, or figure it out in a way that maybe, you know, wasn't scripted or something I'd heard before, right? So.
Can you make your collage of the memory, or perhaps you build sculpture?
That's a good question. I'm thinking more of the of this one. I don't know. No, I think this is it. Right now, that's how I feel. The metal stuff, you know what's happening is a lot of the cardboard things I'm making are looking like they could be made out of metal. And I think that's good, because you can manipulate the cardboard easily. And then it can be, so that frame, that crazy frame I made for that ink thing, I mean, that kind of thrilled me, because I loved that, you know, the yin and yang of it. Like you pull something out and there's a, you know, there's a shadow on one side and then there's a, I'm like, that's kind of going in my head right now as far as sculpture goes. But You know, I work on all this stuff, there'll be half-done things in the studio that feed off each other, right? And that whole series of photography of Picasso, scrutinize those photos, because you'll get so much information out of it. There's one shot where he's staring at one of his sculptures, and he's making a painting of Jacqueline from the sculpture. So it's like everything sort of feeds each other, you know. So I like to have those things in the studio. They're kind of half done and half baked, and you know, whatever. They might inform something else. But the other thing too is don't have your art around you. You know, have it somewhere else where someone else can enjoy it. You know, that's your job is done, right? Possibilities should be in your studio.
But how do you make yourself do that? After I talked to you a couple of weeks ago, you told me, get rid of it, burn it, do whatever.
I said,
you
come
want.
to my house and I'll help you burn it.
No,
That's what I said.
I took your word, and the next day I went into my little studio that I have at home, and I sorted this stuff and this stuff and this stuff, and I got these piles, and I put them all back in the drawer, and I got these, and I ended up with half a garbage bag of stuff to throw out.
Did you feel good?
Well, yeah, but
Yeah.
I wanted to throw out tons.
Well,
but
you
I
gotta.
can't let myself.
Well, it'll happen in increments, you know. But be kind to yourself too. You know, well, we're all. Listen, the clock is ticking for everybody. You know, I feel that all the time. It's like there's not enough time to do all the projects I want to do. You know, but
So I think
but-
your answer to me was get somebody else to come in. and
get somebody
follow.
else to help you. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hire someone to help you. You know, or you know, get a good friend to do it, to help you do this stuff, because it's, you know, it can be like a big weight, right? And you know, I've had to do it because I moved so many times. You know, I moved from studio to studio, you know, not always because I wanted to, right? But I landed in a good place, and I wanted it to be a fresh start. And I know what the feeling of, you know, discovery is. I know what it feels like. I want to feel like that again, you know. So, but you can't if you've got all of your past behind you, you know. So, yeah, and you will. You're gonna do it. Just, you know, because you get a little taste of it. You go, ooh, that's good. Now I can make something of space, right? You know. Anybody else?
What you're talking about reminded me of John Hasenkowski used to talk about, I can't remember the name of the sculptor that did sculptures of a pope many years ago. And
He did sculptures
of a pope.
of a pope, right?
And he had all these little heads. And so he went down the line and he said, "Is there life in there?" No. Bomb.
Yeah.
So I went through my paintings.
Good.
And I said, "Oh, is there any life in this painting?" No, it's bone garbage.
Good. Yeah.
It was very freeing.
It is very freeing, and you can give them away, but just the fact that they exist drives me nuts, you know. and they're not all bad. They're all there they helped you get where you are, right? So you have to sort of honor that. But yeah, I highly recommend it. Big pile of fire. Anybody else have any questions about any process or any things I'm doing? Or, come to my studio. Come and visit. Right. Where am I? Where are you? It's another land. No, it's just north of Ayr in Roseville. So I bought a church around 2016, and so the chapel part is my studio, and I have a little gallery space. It's just kind of an incubator space for, you know, trying out ideas, and for my students. You know, I do a show for the mentorship students every year, and we, you know, but it's kind of like and I think an incubator would be a good word for it, you know. And that was kind of, it's like when I kind of was trying to figure out how to do it, it was mostly that's where I would hang my work, is in the church hall downstairs, right? So if somebody wanted to come buy a painting or whatever, I just set it up nice so they're not flipping through your stuff in your studio, you know? And then my studio became my sanctuary. I didn't have to have people up there if I didn't want to. I could just invite them into the gallery space. So that worked out nice to have that. So I'm in a, you know, it's pretty cool, right?